Welcome to The Opinion Piece. My name's Andy Stevens. I'm going to be your host for the next 4 episodes. And this mini-series is on a subject which quite frankly needs explaining. I'm embarrassed to say CSCS cards, I'm nearly 50, I've never seen one because we don't need them in residential. But obviously commercial and sites, you do need them. There's a lot of talk around CSCS cards at the moment. Grandfather rights, what's happening next year, new government. So I can't do this on my own. So I'm very pleased to say we've got Dan Brown and Martin, both from GQA qualifications up in Sheffield. Had the train journey down, so thank you both for coming in. And we're going to go through the next 4 episodes, going back to the history of CSCS, where it is now and where it's going. So hopefully you can take something away and learn something from it. I know I'm certainly going to learn from this. Guys, let's start at the beginning. If we've got apprentices watching this, let's go right back. What is a CSCS card? In a very easy to explain way.
Okay. I suppose CSCS is a term that's quite familiar to everybody, but not really sure of its origins. I think if we look at where it started, we go back to a time when I was trying to pretend I was a member of Oasis. We go back to 1995, where the CITB and the Department for Education and Employment had a lot of serious concerns about construction, very similar to concerns at the moment. So people not really qualified to do the job that they're supposed to be doing, health and safety concerns, and a lot of work-related injuries and deaths. So in 1995, that's when the CSCS was established. The aim really is to put people on a formal route of qualification or assessment to address those problems with poor quality and poor site safety. And I guess between then and where we are now, there's been quite a lot of iterations and introductions. I think it's fair to say that when the CSCS launched, it got quite a bit of momentum. I think in the early 2000s, I think there was a lot of contractors that found that it was very useful to vet people coming onto site, understand where the skills and experience were. And so it did receive quite a lot of traction, really. I guess moving on from the 2000s, as the scheme became more popular, I think there was an understanding that there was probably a need to introduce I suppose, specialised partners to take care of specific trades with certification. So the partner scheme was set up. That was in 2007. So partner scheme, GQA has been part of the partner scheme. We issue cards for construction and glazing occupations. And there's other trade sector organisations that also issue cards to do different other specialisms. So that was one of the first big changes to CS, introduction of partner schemes. I think what happened then again, the spread of CSCS and the popularity grew so much that invariably, when people are asked to become assessed for the skills and competency that they do, often people can take, I guess, the path which is easy, rather than the path that is right. And for people that kind of want to cheat the system, there's always opportunity for people, criminals, to introduce fraud. So that was the next thing that CSCS had to really address. The issues of the problem was fraud with a CSCS card, easy to replicate. A lot of people not willing to go onto an MVQ or become assessed. So
I'm getting messages daily.
Yeah.
Through social media, Instagram, and they're straight to the point. You don't have to go on the course, you don't have to do this, give us a bit of cash, cards with you.
So the problem with fraud, you've got to find a way of addressing it, and thankfully we got to 2020 when we got the technology now to introduce QR codes and scanning. So in 2020, I think that's when the Smart Checker app came in, which helped get rid of fraudulent cards. You know, people were bringing cards to site, they were scanned, it took you to a CSCS website. And you could check who the people were and check they were a relevant card. Those without a real card, it were evident that off you go, you're not coming on this site. So that's been an important step. Criminals are always competing and trying to catch up and trying to provide solutions for people that are just perhaps being pushed in a direction they don't want to go. And I suppose the final iteration, really important iteration, as well as grandfather rights that we'll talk about, is I think there was a recognition that there was about 38 certification bodies in construction. CSCS just being one, but the majority. And they all looked after about 2.1 million construction site workers. And there's a lot of alignment going in construction at the moment, and I think there was an understanding that actually, let's bring everybody together, let's bring everybody into alignment, and let's create the CSCS Alliance. And we'll pool as knowledge, pool as resources, and try and put CSCS on a path, a one-card system, and try and evolve it to support the way that the industry is moving with demonstration of skills, experience, behaviours. So that's been the kind of the way that it's evolved.
So that's the history, but as I said in the introduction, Martin, I'm close to 50 now, never seen one. So late 80s I started labouring, and even though I'm obviously residential, do you feel that residential is a big market? There's a lot of people that go into, when we did big extensions, loft conversions, whatever, we could have 12, 14 lads and lasses on site. What's your view on that? Because I think I feel ignorant. I don't know what one looks like.
It definitely is a big market, isn't it, residential? And obviously CSCS is all about the commercial sector. I think it's worth understanding what actually CSCS stands for, because people don't understand that. So it stands for the Construction Skills Certification Scheme. And in layman's terms, it's a passport to get onto site to do your job, really. It's a way to prove that you've been qualified in terms of the skill you want to do on site, whether you can be a bricklayer or a plasterer or whatever. And you've been through some health and safety training, passed health and safety test. So when you go on site, you can have your scan card, your card scanned, and you can prove that you are who you say you are, and you can do the job you go on site for. So I think that's probably the biggest reason we have it. And on a construction site, it can be quite an unsafe place to work.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people on there, we've got plant, we've got huge scaffolding, we've got lots of things around there that people need to be aware of. Where on Mrs. Blogg's extension, the safety is a bit pared down a little bit in terms of what you need to be aware of. I think that's the reason why we have it for the commercial sector, but not for the residential sector. However, I think there's room for one to be there, because if you employ someone to work on your house, you want to make sure they are fit to do the job.
And who they say they are.
Exactly. They say they are. They can plumb. They can lay bricks. They can concrete, and it needs something in place to do that. We have the MTC that's out there, but is it enough to cover the whole sector? And currently not. So it needs to have something in for the residential sector as well.
Because it kind of goes back to, is this a way of trying to crowbar in the fact we're not registered or regulated? I've got no qualifications, I've got no apprenticeship. I was used as a labourer and I learnt off the guys on site, and I tell you what, it was hard work back then, but it was brilliant. And I learnt quick. Or you're out. I know things are different now, I appreciate that. But being a regulated industry, I think what I'm trying to say is if we can get this registration process into apprenticeships, because now if I want to come and work on your site, the highest card I can do is labourer, because I phoned them up and asked.
Okay.
But I've obviously got to do the health and safety, etc. first. I think we need to make that clear. You can't just rock up as, a young lad or lass and do your course. You've got to do the relevant health and safety ones first, and I get that.
I think it's a misconception around that. To say that the only card you can get is a labourer's card isn't quite correct.
That's what they told me.
Yeah, if you've got no skill, if you've got no qualifications and you want to work on site as a labourer, then yes, the labourer's card is right for you. However, if your background is a carpenter, you've been working as a carpenter for 15 years, and you haven't got a CSCS card with industry accreditation, what you need to get, it will be a temporary card that will get you onto a site as a carpenter. But to get a temporary card, you've got to be registered to do a qualification and pass the health and safety test. So you can get on site. You won't be able to get a full skilled workers card, but you can work towards that while you're on site. So you can get.
Could I work as a chippy?
You can.
On site with that temporary card.
You can. With a temporary card, if you're registered on NVQ, you can work on site because you're working towards getting the qualification you need.
See, I get it, but I can't do exams. And there's a lot of the guys I work with, you know, I'm reasonably okay at paperwork, not good, but I'm okay. You know, some of the brickie I learned off couldn't even write his own name.
Mm-hmm.
I think what he could do with the trowel.
Yeah, and I can see that, and I totally agree. There are some people who can't do exams, who can't do written work, who don't want to go and attend huge courses. And it's not about that. The exam you would take would be the health and safety test, which you can take online, and there are ways you can do it for people who have neurodiverse needs, where it can be a talked test. To get an NVQ, it's not about having loads and loads of exams. You can do it all with discussions with your assessor. It's about producing evidence that you can do your job. So you're observed on site, carrying out your job, and then you have a discussion around why you do it and how you do it with the background knowledge. So I think, again, goes down misinformation, misconception that you haven't got to go on a course to gain a qualification to the job. It can all be done in the workplace with some.
And that's great to hear. That is really good to hear, because a lot of mates I've spoken to, and I can't sit and do an exam.
Yeah, I can't be bothered
And
to do that.
you know, I can't remember the percentage. A few people have told me it of neurodiverse people in construction. It's very high.
It is.
Because you know we work with these, not that. I've always said that in the talks I do.
There's 20,000 people, I think, in construction that's dyslexic. So they're always going to struggle with written assessment. But again, this is about challenging. It's a culture change, this. So first of all, you mentioned apprentices. I think it's right that we speak to apprentices, let them know the travel of the construction industry. You know, it is more regulated. It is a skillful industry. You want a career, you want to support yourself. You may want to have your own business. Qualification assessment is part of that. It's about ensuring you can do the job correctly to the highest quality. First time, you don't want to be going back. You'll lose money. You'll go out of business. And you've got to be reasonably sure that you can work in a safe fashion. So it's important, I think, we instill that into apprentices. But again, then you mentioned about people saying, okay, now I've got to go through an assessment. Is it a qualification? I can't go back to college and start writing books. I think we've got to understand there's different levels of assessment, like Martin said, observation, discussion. There's different methods of assessing somebody's capability to do a job.
Do you know, I've got to say, it's great to hear that.
You have to.
It's really good to hear that. And it's quite embarrassing that I've phoned up, made this inquiry. Okay, I'm looking at coming onto site. And what I was told was kind of right, but not. And then hearing that as well. This is the reason we've set this up. Because we want experts like you in your chosen field to be able to sit here and give truthful advice and help. So apprentices or youngsters that are watching it, wanting to come into the industry, go, oh, okay, I can do that. So we could talk about this all afternoon, but we'll bring episode 1 to a close. And next week, it'll be a long one. Different types of CSCS cards. How many are there? What are they for? Who are they for? We'll be back same time next week.